Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Boss Economic World. The only show that peels back the layers of the global economy like a very complicated, multi-trillion-dollar onion. And trust me, there are usually tears involved. Today, we're diving headfirst into a high-stakes drama playing out between two of the world's closest allies, the United States and South Korea. The date is October 17, 2025. And on the surface, this looks like a trade negotiation. But folks, when you dig deeper, this isn't about trade. It's about a $350 billion demand, a nation's life savings, the ghost of a financial crisis, and a geopolitical chess match with China looking over everyone's shoulder. So, grab your popcorn and maybe a calculator because we're about to break down a deal so tense, it makes family Thanksgiving dinners look like a walk in the park. Alright, let's set the stage. 4 months, Washington and Seoul have been locked in what you might call intensely awkward talks. The centerpiece of this whole shebang is a massive trade agreement. The US, under President Trump, agreed to cap tariffs on all Korean goods at 15%. This is huge, especially for South Korean car giants like Hyundai and Kia, who are currently getting hammered by a 25% tariff on their cars entering the US market. Think about that for a second. Your main competitor, Japan's Toyota or Honda, has a more favorable arrangement. That 10% difference on a $40,000 Kia Telluride is $4,000. That's not a small discount, that's the difference between a sale and a customer walking across the street to a rival dealership. For an export-driven economy like South Korea, where exports make up over 40% of their entire GDP, this deal isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a must-have. So, what's the catch? The catch. It's a doozy. In exchange for this tariff cap, South Korea pledged to create a $350 billion investment fund for the United States. And here's where the friendly handshake turns into an arm-wrestling match. President Trump, in his signature transactional style, is insisting that this $350 billion be delivered up front. In cash. Let me translate this into personal finance terms. Imagine you want to get a premium membership at a fancy country club that gives you a discount on everything. The owner, a very wealthy and very demanding guy, says, sure, you can have the membership. But first, I need you to transfer 80% of your entire life savings into my bank account. Just so I know you're serious. You'd probably say, are you out of your mind? Well, that's exactly what South Korea is saying. That $350 billion figure isn't just a random number. For South Korea, it represents more than 80% of its entire foreign exchange reserves. Now, what are foreign exchange reserves? For the finance pros watching, you know this, but for everyone else, think of it as a nation's emergency savings account. It's the oh crap the world is on fire fund. It's a war chest of foreign currencies, mostly US dollars, but also gold and other stable assets. You don't use this money to buy groceries. You use it for 3 critical things. 1. Paying for vital imports, like oil and food, which are priced in dollars. 2. Paying off foreign debt, to show the world you're good for your money. 3. Defending your currency, this is the big one. If investors get spooked and start selling your currency, its value plummets. The central bank then uses its dollar reserves to buy up one on the open market, propping up its value and preventing a total collapse. Draining over 80% of this emergency fund in one go would be like a tightrope walker voluntarily giving away their safety net. It would send a massive signal of weakness to global markets. Speculators would pounce on the Korean won, betting it would fall. The currency would weaken, the cost of imports would skyrocket, inflation would explode, and foreign capital would flee the country. Does this sound familiar? It should. It's the exact nightmare scenario that happened during the 1997 Asian financial crisis. South Korea ran out of foreign reserves, the won collapsed by over 50%, and the country had to go, hat in hand, to the IMF for a humiliating $58 billion bailout that came with incredibly painful austerity measures. The memory of 1997 is seared into the South Korean national psyche. It's a national trauma. They vowed never again. And since then, they have painstakingly rebuilt their reserves. They see those reserves not just as money, but as a shield of national sovereignty. So when Finance Minister Koo Yoon-cheol went on TV in Washington and said making the investment up front in cash would not be feasible, he wasn't being dramatic. He was saying, you are asking us to risk a repeat of the worst economic disaster in our modern history. So why is the US being so demanding? Don't they understand the risk? Oh, they do. And that's what makes this so fascinating. Let's look at the US team. We have Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, the CEO of financial giant Cantor Fitzgerald, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, a legendary hedge fund manager who used to be George Soros's chief investment officer. These aren't clueless politicians. These are sharks from the deepest waters of Wall Street. They understand FX markets better than almost anyone. They know exactly what a $350 billion outflow would do to the won. So this isn't an oversight. It's leverage. From the Trump administration's perspective, this is about getting a concrete, headline-grabbing win. I secured a $350 billion cash injection for America is a much more powerful political soundbite than we arranged a complex, long-term investment structure. It's about the optics of being tough and putting America first. An upfront payment is seen as the ultimate proof of commitment and submission. The US side sees the deal this way: we are the world's largest consumer market. Access to it is a privilege, not a right. You want that privilege? You pay the entry fee. The fact that the fee is painfully high is the point. It establishes who's the boss in this relationship. Faced with this impossible demand, the Koreans have come back with a counter-proposal. They've said, okay. If we are going to do something that even remotely resembles this, we need a safety net. A big one. We need a currency swap line with the US. So, what on earth is a currency swap? Think of it as the ultimate overdraft protection from your richest friend. A currency swap between central banks, like the Bank of Korea and the US Federal Reserve, allows South Korea to temporarily exchange its won for US dollars at a fixed rate. If a crisis hits and Korea starts running low on its own dollar reserves to defend the won, it can activate the swap. It gets a massive injection of dollars, stabilizes its market, and then, once the crisis passes, it swaps the dollars back for won, paying a small interest fee for the service. It's a powerful tool to prevent financial panic. But here's the spicy little detail, reported by the Munhwa Ilbo newspaper. The talks aren't about a standard swap line between the Fed and the Bank of Korea. No, they're discussing an Argentina-style currency swap, funded not by the independent Federal Reserve, but by the US Treasury itself. Argentina-style. Folks, in the world of international finance, those are two very, very scary words. Why? Because Argentina is famous for a cycle of currency crises, defaults, and bailouts. A swap line designed for a country like that is not a partnership between equals. It's a lifeline for an economy perceived as chronically unstable. For the US to even suggest this model is a subtle but powerful dig. It's saying, we hear you're worried about instability. Maybe you are a bit unstable. So we'll give you a bailout facility, not a partnership facility. This is a negotiation tactic. It reframes the swap from a concession to Korea into another demonstration of American power, the power to be the lender of last resort. As if this financial tightrope walk wasn't enough, this whole drama is playing out on a much larger geopolitical chessboard. There are two other major pieces in play: shipbuilding and China. First, the ships. While Korean officials are in D.C., they're also meeting with the Office of Management and Budget to discuss a new American initiative called Make American Shipbuilding Great Again. For decades, the U.S. has let its commercial shipbuilding industry wither. Today, it's a shadow of its former self. Meanwhile, South Korea is a shipbuilding titan, especially for highly complex vessels like LNG carriers. China, however, has become the world's dominant force through massive state subsidies, building ships faster and cheaper than anyone. The US has woken up and realized that having a weak shipbuilding industry is a major national security vulnerability. You can't be a global naval power if you can't build or even repair your own ships efficiently. So, America needs help to rebuild its industrial base, and who is the world's best at high-tech shipbuilding? Its ally, South Korea. This brings us to the final player, lurking in the shadows, China. Beijing is watching this budding US-Korea shipbuilding alliance with fury. Just recently, China slapped sanctions on the US unit of Hanwha Ocean, a massive South Korean shipbuilder. This wasn't a random act. It was a warning shot. A message sent from Beijing to Seoul: you team up with our rival, and we will make you pay. China is playing a classic wedge strategy. It wants to show South Korea that getting closer to the US will come at a great economic cost. It wants to make Seoul think twice. The US State Department, of course, condemned China's move, calling it an irresponsible attempt to disrupt cooperation. So let's zoom out and look at the whole, messy, beautiful picture. This is not a simple trade talk. It's the United States, under a transactional president, using its market power to demand a historically large capital transfer from a key ally, a move that the Wall Street veterans on his team know could destabilize the Korean economy. It's South Korea, haunted by the ghost of the 1997 crisis, desperately trying to protect its hard-won economic stability while also needing a trade deal to keep its export engine running. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. It's a negotiation over a currency swap that is layered with psychological power plays, with the US framing it as a potential bailout rather than a partnership of equals. And it's all happening under the watchful eye of China, which is actively trying to sabotage the US-Korea alliance by weaponizing its own economic power against Korean companies. The shipbuilding deal isn't just about commerce, it's a strategic alignment against Beijing's industrial dominance. The $350 billion isn't just money. It's a loyalty test. The car tariffs aren't just a tax. They are the stick. The shipbuilding alliance isn't just a business venture. It's a strategic pact. What will happen? The Apex summit is the deadline. Pressure is immense. The most likely outcome is a compromise. The US will have to back down from the all-cash, all-upfront demand. It's simply not feasible. South Korea will likely have to agree to a structured investment plan that is faster and more US-centric than it would like. A currency swap line, probably one managed by the Treasury to save face for the US, will likely be part of the final package as a guarantee. But the way they get there will define the US-South Korea relationship for the next decade. Is it a partnership of allies facing common challenges? Or is it a transactional relationship between a superpower and a client state? That is the multi-billion-dollar question being decided right now in the backrooms of Washington, D.C. And that, my friends, is the real, unvarnished story behind the headlines. It's never just about the numbers, it's about the history, the fear, the power, and the personalities behind them. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never just accept the simple answer. I'm Boss, and this has been Boss Economic World. I'll see you next time.